Okay, welcome everybody to February's webinar. Today's webinar will be on the administration console and we'll focus primarily on users, user groups and client configurations in this session. Okay, just a quick introduction. My own name is Niall Fahy for those of you who have not joined us previously. I'm based here in Cork in our EMEA office in Ireland. Okay, so I do all the internal and external training for Mozy. I have been with Mozy now for about 4.5 years. I started here doing tech support. I moved into the training role about 2.5 years ago. So yeah, prior to that I was doing tech support here for Mozy. Okay, so today's session we will be going through the administration console. It will consist of a short slide deck presentation. Okay, so generally takes about 10 to 15 minutes. And then we will do a walkthrough of what we cover in the actual slide deck presentation for another 15 to 20 minutes. And then we'll leave the time that's left over to any questions and answers on today's session. Okay, if you do have any questions that are not related to today's session, I would ask you that you email them directly to me. Okay, if I can and I have time, I will try and answer them at the end, but I will be answering specific questions to today's session first. Okay, so let's get started. So just a quick overview of the administration console and MozyPro. Okay, so for those of you who are the root admins, you know MozyPro is designed for yourselves so that you can manage and back up data from your company to our servers on the web. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier on, we'll be looking at users, user groups and client configurations in today's session. Okay, and how you go about managing those. So just some definitions on the administration console before we begin, just as I'll be using them throughout. The administrator is actually the person to whom the MozyPro account is assigned. So this would be the root administrator we would generally be talking about when we talk about the administrator. So this is someone designated to manage the account by the account owner. Okay, so it can either be the root administrator or it can be a sub-administrator. For larger organizations, you will have instances where you have a couple of sub-administrators. They're looking after the day-to-day runnings of the Mozy installation in your company. Okay, in smaller companies, obviously, it would probably be just the one person that's looking after the root administration, and it's the same person who decided to actually go ahead and take Mozy on board within the organization. The user is someone that's assigned to manage a device that is being backed up by MozyPro. So that is obviously, you know, either your employees, people who maybe you're selling on the software to, that would actually be using the software on a day-to-day basis. So they would have an installation of the Mozy client on their machine. Okay. Resources then, that's the users, the storage quota, and devices that are being used that are using MozyPro. Okay, so when I talk about resources, most often than not, I'm talking about storage quota and devices. Okay. So for MozyPro, most of you will already know there are two user types. So we have a desktop user and we have a server user. You will see this now in the new rollout of the administration console, that when assigning a user, you have to select whether a desktop user or a server user. Basically, a desktop user is designed for desktop machines, obviously, laptops, computers, and so on, and your general day-to-day work machine that you would see in most offices and at most people's desks. Okay, a desktop user cannot install on a server operating system. Okay, so if you try to install the Mozy software on a server operating system and you use a desktop user's account, it will throw you back an encryption error. Okay, either an encryption error or an account error. That is just basically just you getting an acknowledgement that you actually can't use a desktop user on a server operating system. A server user, however, it's primarily obviously designed for server operating systems, but it can also run on a desktop machine as well. Okay, so if you're connecting to network shares, network applications, or anything along those lines, you will need a server user to back up those applications. Okay, so even if you are using a desktop machine or a laptop of your own and you're connected to a network share or a network application and you want to back those up, you do need to have a server operating a server. You need to be set up as a server user for your Mozy account to back those up. Okay, and you'll notice that if you have a desktop, user at the moment yourself, you will notice that if you open up your configuration window of the client on your desktop, you will notice in the File System tab section you don't have an ability there to add a network share. For anybody who's on a desktop machine at the moment and has themselves set up as a server user, they will be able to open up their client configuration on their machine and see that they have the ability to add a network share. Okay. Logging into the MozyPro Admin Console is straightforward enough. Okay, for root administrators, okay, so you will be logging in directly to mozypro.com/login. You can also log in via mozy.com/login. Okay, but it is only the root administrator that can access the administration console from this web address. Okay, if you have sub-administrators, they will need to go via your subdomain. Okay, and this should be set up when you're actually setting up your account. If you don't have your subdomain set up and you want to give sub-administrators access to your administration console online, or you want to give your end users access into to their actual machines online so that they can perform web restores, do reach out to our support and they can set up that subdomain for you. Okay, so as I was saying, sub-administrators will need to go via your subdomain. Your subdomain login will look something like the one you'll see on the screen here. It's generally your company's name .mozypro.com/login, and it'll either be /admin for sub-administrators, or if you were into users, it'll obviously be /users. Okay, so again, it's only your root admin that would be able to go in to Mozy's website, so mozy.com, and log in from there. So what can we actually do within the administration console? Okay, so the admin console, it's quite a powerful tool. Okay, so you can do quite a lot in here. So you do just need to be careful. What you are doing is generally what you actually do want to do. So obviously, you know, there's the basics in terms of purchasing resources. If you have issues, if you need to purchase additional resources, if you want to reduce the amount of resources that you have, all that can be done via the administration console. Again, you know, obviously, you know, you need to be careful in the sense that you may not need to purchase additional resources and you may do it accidentally. So again, we'll look at that here in this session about going about actually purchasing resources. Creating, managing, and deleting users or devices. Okay, so again, you can actually create new users. So, which is obviously one that you probably will be interacting with most often than not. Managing users and devices, again, with the new look administration console, it's less hands-on in terms of managing existing users. But in terms of deleting users, you can do that from the administration console. You can delete users, you can delete devices. So again, that just needs to bring a moment of caution if you actually do that. If by any way of accident, or you know, it can happen sometimes if you're, you know, opening multiple users, or if you're closing users, sometimes the window can actually, you know, jump up on you. So a box, a new window might open down, move down from where you were clicking on a second ago, and you can accidentally hit delete. Okay, so you will be prompted, obviously, if that's the situation, you know, but sometimes accidents happen. You may not wish to delete a user or a device, and you might do so accidentally. If you do, please do reach out to our support as quickly as you can. We can generally sometimes revert that delete, but the longer you leave it go, the less the chance of us actually being able to restore it becomes. Okay, creating, managing, and deleting administrators can also be done. Okay, so again, this is all dependent on the size of your organization. Okay, so if you're going to be a small 1 or 2 people outfit, you know, additional administrators may not be a necessity for you, but for larger companies you can create additional sub-administrators. Okay, so if you want additional people to be able to go in there and create users so that the burden of the workload doesn't fall on you, to be adding new users all the time or anything like that. Again, you can delete administrators there as well from the administration console if an admin should leave the company or anything like that. You can limit resource usage at the user group level, at the user level, and at the device level as well. Okay, so limiting resources, I'll go into it in a bit more detail in a minute. It just allows you to put a limit on a particular user, device, or user group in relation to the amount of storage they can actually consume. You can create reports of backups, usage, and so on. You can create web restores for the end users, and again, it's would do well to point out here that if you do create a web restore for an end user, the end user will always know that a restore has been created for them. They will receive an email to say that the web restore is being created, okay, and they will get an email to say it's available for them. So there is a track there all the time of any web restores that are created, so that we keep a history of it, so that the customer can check it themselves, and also that there's no situation where any security breaches can come out of anybody inadvertently restoring something by mistake or anything like that. Okay, so the administration console and pool storage. Okay, so for many of you, if you're new customers, you would have signed up to us when we had pool storage. For anybody who's here a bit longer, they may remember that we went over to pool storage in and around July, August of 2013, so last summer. Okay, so with that, the purpose of that was to make the admin console more efficient and effective for you administrators. Okay, so obviously one of the main primary tasks of an administrator is making sure that the resources are monitored, so to make sure that the required storage quota is there, the right people have the right amount of devices assigned to them, and so on, so that they have they're not purchasing more quota than they need, and that those who actually need the storage are actually getting the storage that they required for the backups. Okay. The advantage of the pool storage is that it stores the actual the storage you purchase at the company level, so that it's shared throughout the organization, so that it means there's less work in the administration console for you to do. If you were here prior to our change over to pool storage, you will remember that the managing of quota actually was at the machine level. So for example, if you had a user go over quota, okay, on one of their devices, they may have, say, 5 devices backing up on their user account. One of their account goes over quota. Previously, you would have had to come to the administration console, purchase the quota, assign it to the user group, and then assign it to the user. Okay, so it's a lot more steps. Now, with the rather than the storage residing at the device level, it now resides at the actual company level. So it's shared from there. So if you have one user going over quota on one machine, as long as there's free and available storage at the company level, it will just draw down off of that. Again, it reduces your hands-on need for having to manage the amount of storage that is used per user. And obviously, I'll go into it in a second, there is ways to limit that so that certain users are not drawing down more than you want, or they're not hogging the amount of storage that actually you've purchased. Okay. Okay, users within the administration console. Okay, so as we said a while ago, these are the people that are actually managing a device, so they have MozyPro installed on their machine and they're running backups on a daily basis. Okay, so you as the administrator can decide how many devices a user can actually back up. So up to a maximum of 20 devices. I'll show you in a second when we're going through the walkthrough where you can go about actually assigning the amount of devices a user can have. They can have up to a maximum of 20 devices under the one email address. Okay. Again, as I mentioned a while ago as well, if allowed, users will need to log in via the subdomain if they're allowed web access to create their own web restores. From the user level as well, an administrator can also enable sync for the user if they wish. So that's Mozy Sync or synchronization software. It can be set up by the administrator here under the user level. And again, as I mentioned a while ago, if there is a situation where you accidentally delete a user or a device, please do contact our support as quickly as possible. Also within the new administration console, you can still view the license or product keys that we would have used previously if you wish, and I'll show you again where you can view them from. Okay, you can change your users' passwords from within the administration console if they reach out to you. If you do not wish to do it that way, then you can actually, again, via the subdomain, there is a link there from the subdomain to actually reset the password themselves if you don't want to be doing it hands-on and manually resetting passwords for everybody as the administrator. Okay, user groups allow large companies to divide their users, okay, up into groups. Okay, so generally it kind of coincides with the organizational structure, so you may have a user group for marketing, for finance, for sales, for IT, and so on. Okay, they are useful. Not everybody would have access to user groups today. It would generally only benefit you if you have a quite large organization. Okay, user groups can be set up to use resources in 3 different ways. Okay, so as I mentioned a while ago, if you don't want particular users being heavy users and dragging down and putting down on more resources and more storage capacity than you want them to do, you can actually set up limits. So the first one obviously there is shared. That just means that the user group will use as much storage as is available to the organization. Limited, what limited does is that it limits the user group to a set amount of storage it can use. However, it still pulls from the shared pool. Okay, I'll show you in a minute what I mean by this when we're going through the walkthrough. Visually it makes more sense, but basically what it is that you still have the shared storage at the shared level. All you're doing is you're limiting the particular user group from going over that amount. Okay, if there's not enough storage in a shared pool, the user may never reach their limit. Okay, so again, I'll show you that in a second. It makes more sense when you'll actually see it visually. Okay, assign then is going back to the way we used to do storage previously. So you're actually taking the storage out of the shared pool and you're giving it to a particular user group. Okay, and that's the only storage they can use. Okay. Client configurations are very useful if you want to have a centralized control of the configuration and what your users do and do not back up. Okay, so it does allow a very centralized locus of control if you wish. You can create the client configuration from the administration console and it will be pushed out to your users. So if you, for example, wanted the people that you're supplying the software to only back up work-related items, you could create a client configuration that would map around that. Okay, so maybe you don't want them to be backing up photos or music or stuff like that. You can create a client configuration that will lock that down, and that will be pushed out to them when they install the software and they register their account. It'll draw down the client configuration from our servers and they will be forced to use the options within that. Okay, again, I will go through a walkthrough of creating a client configuration in a second. Okay, and we'll start that there now. Okay, so as you can see from here, you can see my desktop now, and this is my administration console for one of my training partners. Okay, so first thing we're going to look at here, okay, is our users, our resources, and we will see also our user groups. Okay, so we're going to go up here to a resource summary. Okay, so as you can see here, this is my storage that's on my account. I have 50.2 gigabytes available, and I'm using 49.8 gigabytes. Okay, what does that mean for me? Okay, so I have 3 user groups here. I have a shared user group, I have a limited user group, and I have an assigned user group. Okay, now I have, as you can see here, on the limited user group, I have that limited to 50 gigabytes. Okay, I'm not using any of that. On my shared user group, I have 9.8 gigabytes used, and on my assigned, I have 40 gigabytes. Okay, and as we can see up here, my used is 49.8 gigabytes. It's this 40 gigabytes here that's assigned to the user group, and this 9.8 gigabytes here. This limited 50 gigabytes doesn't matter. It's still available because the limited user group is pulling from the shared resources, okay, and it's only a limit. It's an upward limit of where the actual user group can go to. So you'll see it here. If I edit this user group here, and I change this here to shared and save it, my graph updates here. I now only have back again to my 9.8 gigabytes free, or used, apologies. And my available now has jumped up to 90.2 gigabytes, okay? Because this is now a shared user group. Again, if I change this back to assigned, 40 gigabytes, what it's doing there is because this user group is assigned, it's taking the 40 gigabytes out of my shared storage because it's saying that I want this 40 gigabytes only specifically for this particular user group. It does mean that even if I had, like I do here, I have 50 gigabytes available still here. It does mean that if this user group gets to 40 gigabytes of usage, it will start returning account errors to saying that there's no more storage available and it needs more storage, even if I do have free storage in the actual organization. I would need to manually come in here and just change this here. Okay, I need to upgrade this to maybe an extra 10 gigabytes if I needed to. Okay. With limited, as I said, all I'm doing is that I'm saying this user group has an upward limit of 50 gigabytes. It's pulling from the available storage, and even if there was a situation where my available storage was 10 gigabytes, it wouldn't matter here that my limit is 50 gigabytes on this training group because it'll try and pull what's available to it at the time from the shared pool, but it won't go, it can only go as high as what's available until it hits its limit. So even if you didn't have enough storage, it would max out, but it just ensures that if you had 500 gigabytes available, that it wouldn't go above its 50 gigabytes that it's limited to. You can do this at the device level, and you can also do it at the user level as well if you want to limit the amount of storage that a particular user or device uses. Okay, so where can I check that in terms of users? So on the left-hand side here, I can search my list users. Okay, I'll pull out this user here. So this is my own one here. And as you can see here, I have no user storage limit set. Okay, and I don't have a limit set on the device either. My sync container also doesn't have any limit. It's telling me there's 50.2 gigabytes available. As you remember a while ago, that's what was available in my resources to draw down on because it's a shared resource. Okay, so it's organizational wide, and I'm sharing from that centralized pool. Okay, if I want, I can set a device limit by clicking on set, and in here I can set my limit. So I can change this to 10 gigabytes. Okay, and hit save. And then when I've set that limit, it now changes that 50.2 gigabytes that was up here as well to 3 gigabytes available because I'm limiting this device to 10 gigabytes usage only. I can edit that at any time. I can remove it also if I wish. Okay, I'll remove it there now. It's telling me, are you sure you want to remove it? Yes, I do. And I can come down here and actually set a storage limit on the user. So if I had this user and I allowed them have, say, 15 devices, but I want to limit them entirely. I don't want to do device by device. I'll just say I only want this user to use 40 gigabytes in total and save it. Okay. It sets that limit to the entire user, and as you can see now, it's updated both my device here, my laptop computer, and also my sync container. They are both now sharing storage that's left over, which is 30.2 gigabytes. Okay, even though I have an additional 20 gigabytes of storage free and available in the actual organization. Okay, so the advantage of this is if you know a particular person is a heavy user and you want to encourage maybe that they actually pay attention to what they're actually selecting for backup, you can limit the amount of storage space that they can use. Okay. Again, if you want to edit the amount of devices available, you can do that from here. Okay, you can edit it there and increase the amount of devices you have available. As you notice there, I am a server user for this, even though I do have it installed on my laptop here. It's just for training purposes, mainly that I would have the server user installed so that I can show the ability to add network shares and so on. But you can, if you are a server user, you can update it, or even if you're a desktop user, you can update it from here as well, the amount of devices you want to give to this user. Okay. If you need for any reason to view the product keys, you can do that here. Okay, and I'll list the product keys that are being used here. Okay. You can enable sync for the user from here also. Okay, first of all, the sync needs to be enabled at the partner level, and then you can do it at the individual user level or even at the user group level. Okay, so you can enable it here, enable sync, yes, and you send the invitation email and it will send out the link, the download link for the user. Okay, from the user also, you can, as I mentioned a while ago, you can delete the user, you can change the user's password, you can change their email, and you can log in as the user. Okay, logging in as the user will just show you what the customer sees, or the end user, be it a customer or a fellow colleague or whatever the situation may be, will just show you what they see when they log in. It's a very limited view. This is all they will see when they log in. They'll see their own device and they'll have the ability to restore their files. Okay, so it's very limited from what they can see compared to what you will see when you log in the administration console like this. Okay, so this is the user. As I say, you can delete the user. You will be prompted if you do to make sure that you want to do that. If you do it by accident or for whatever other reason, do please reach out to us as soon as you can in support to ensure that we can undelete that user successfully. Okay, as I say, you can change the user's password from here. Now, depending on how many users you're going to have and you're going to be managing, it might be more of an idea to set up their subdomain, okay, and have them actually go there and click on the forgot password link and do it themselves. Okay, just to go back up to add a new user. Okay, so this is what adding a new user looks like. If you have user groups, you will select your user group from here. Okay, if you don't have user groups, your default user group will automatically be selected, okay, and you will follow through. Okay, oops. So I'll just select my default one here. Okay, it tells me what type of user I want. I select server or desktop. Okay, from here, when I am creating the user, I can also create a storage limit. As I showed you there a second ago, you can also do it once the user is created by coming in here and doing it. User storage limit here or device storage limit here. You can also do it when creating the user. It is optional. You don't have to do it, but you can do it when creating it from the beginning. Okay. Select how many devices you want the user to use. Okay, again, up to a maximum of 20. Okay, and if you wish the user to have the synchronization tool, you tick this option as well. Okay, fill in the user's name and their email address. If you need to add additional, if you're adding multiple users, you can do like so. Okay, and you can have, they can all, you know, if you want them to have the same setup as each other when you're creating them or adding them, you can do it like that. Okay, if you want to remove them, it's just straightforward like that. And then This option will be automatically ticked to send the users instructions emails, and once you hit the add users, it will send the email to the customer or to the end user, work colleague, or however you may be using Mozy in your organization, and they will receive an email welcoming them to Mozy, and they will have to follow the instructions in the link to set up their account. Okay, so straightforward enough in terms of adding users and so on. As I said, in terms of resources, if you have additional, in resources under change plan is where you will go if you need to add additional storage. Okay, you can click on any of these buy more links as well, and that will bring you to the change plan section. You can also get it down here on the left hand side under resources. When you open up the change plan section, it will show you, it will be highlighted the current purchase you have. Okay, and if you have additional add-ons like the server plan, which I do, okay, it'll be there. You won't be able to click the submit button. It won't do anything unless you actually change something here. Okay, so if you change something, okay, so if you go up, in this instance, if I was to go up to the 250 gigabyte bundle, it'll tell me the change here, what my updated plan is, and I'll be able to submit it. Likewise, if I go down, it'll tell me what my change is, what my updated plan is, and then I'll submit. You can also see there, as I went down, my server plan went down as well with it. Okay, so that's just the change plan section. So the client configuration will be the next one. We'll just in the last one we looked through on this walkthrough. Okay, before the Q&A. So you will all have the ability here on the left-hand side underneath configuration to select client configuration. Okay, you will select whether you want it for your server users or your desktop users. Okay, so I'll select for my server users. I'll give it my name, so we'll give it webinar example. Okay, is what we'll call it. And we'll hit next. I then get a view of these multiple tabs, okay, and shows me my preferences first, then my scheduling, bandwidth throttling, backup sets for Windows, backup sets for Macs, and the user groups I want to attach this to. So your preferences here, it's the exact same way as you go through setting up your client on your machine. Okay, so the general options here are ones that will work for both Mac and Windows, and then you have the Windows specific options down here. Okay, so you have the option to select it as a setting, and you also have the options to lock it out. Okay, so what does that do? So for example, if I want to show advanced backup set features, okay, if I hit that as a setting, it shows it to the user when they install the software. They can, however, in their own options, deselect that option. So inside their own configuration window, they'll be able to toggle that because I've only set it as a setting. If I don't want to and I want to force it, I hit lock. That means it's a setting, it's there, they can't change it. Okay, so any of the ones then here that don't have a lock option next to them, simply because if you set it as a setting, it is already locking it. Straightforward enough on there. Don't allow users to add or edit your backup sets. If you hit that as a setting, obviously that's something we don't want the user to be able to play around with, because the reason you're setting it as a setting is because you don't want the user to do something. Okay, so you do it like that, you set it as a setting, it's automatically locked. The user can now not add it or edit any backup sets that are there. Okay, so there is all the additional options there. I won't run through them all. A lot of them you will see already within the Windows client. You recognize them from there. What I will say is that if you are creating a custom configuration, if you have it if you make any changes after the fact that you've installed it, so for example you have 3 machines today, you install with custom configuration, all those 3 machines pull down that custom configuration as they're being installed. If next week you make changes to that configuration, the changes won't be pulled down unless you lock the options. Okay, so you're saying that you definitely want this to happen. Okay, as it says, it highlights here, options that are not locked will not be overwritten in existing installations. Those new settings will apply to, if you don't lock them, those new settings will apply to new installations, but any existing installations, they will not apply to. You will need to come in and make sure that you, if you're selecting, so for example, I'm coming in and today I'm making changes to an existing configuration that I've already created. Okay, I now want to set this as a setting, show advanced backup set features. I need to lock it also to ensure that it shows on the new installation, or the existing installation. Okay. My scheduling is similar enough. I can set the parameters here. Okay, so I can set the parameters to the amount of CPU usage, how many minutes I want the machine to be idle by, and don't back up this more than this many times per day. I can lock all those out and force the user to use them, or I can set it as a setting and allow the user to make their own decision when they actually install the software. Okay. Again, you can force the user to use these scheduling options. So if you select the scheduling option here, you can force the user as well, or just set in here your parameters and allow the customer, if they want, or the end user, to come in and actually make changes to themselves. Okay. Bandwidth throttling. Okay. You can enable a bandwidth throttle. Okay, from here. Okay, so that's your standard bandwidth throttle. The user will see this within the client. Okay, they'll see that you're throttling the bandwidth between certain times on certain days of the week, and you can force the user to use these bandwidth options. Okay, so if you enable it here, it just means that it's enabled on the client. It will use the settings that you have in here, but if the user decides to change it, they can. If you force it, they can't make any changes to it. We also have the option in here for administrators that they can enforce a hidden bandwidth limit. Okay, so regardless of the above setting, that you can enforce a hidden bandwidth limit. So, for example, you may enable a bandwidth throttling between the hours of 9 and 5, so that not all the bandwidth is being used up during the day, during business hours when you're at your busiest. But then even overnight, you may not want to use all your bandwidth entirely towards running backups. So you can also put in a bandwidth throttle, a bandwidth limit here, that your end users will not be able to see at all. They will see these settings, these ones here, they will see these settings even if you lock it, okay? But this one, they won't see at all, okay? Windows backup sets the exact same as your client, okay? You can view and edit them, or you can delete them. You can also create your own backup sets from here, okay? When you create your own one, you can give it a name, okay? These search locations here are quick search locations that you can include. Okay, so if you do My Documents, we'll search in My Documents, My Music, My Pictures. These are quick search locations that you can add in. Okay, you can also delete them if you want. Okay, you can add additional search locations like that if you want to do them line by line. Okay, and then your rules are the most important. Okay, so adding your rules, what you're actually looking for in this search. Okay, include file type, by size, by last modified, by created, by file name, by folder name. You will find additional information on creating backup sets within our knowledge base at support.mozy.com. There are some good articles in there about creating backup sets, and I'll be doing a webinar this year. I can't remember which month I have it penned in for, but we will be doing a session anyway on creating backup sets and so on like that, and file selection. Okay, so once you're happy with that, you just hit done and it creates the backup set for you. Okay, again, you have the option here to hit it as a setting so that you want it to be an option for the customer to use or the end user, and then locking it out forces them to use it. So again, you could limit everything that the customer can select, and you could actually pick out a couple of backup sets. So for example, maybe you're somebody working in finance, you may only want them backing up their Excel spreadsheets and their relevant Word documents, or any other software they may use for their day-to-day work. You could actually create a backup set here, or you could use the existing ones that are relevant and lock them down so that the customer can only use them and can't make any changes to them. Okay. Mac backup sets are the exact same. The only difference with a Mac backup set is that you do have to use a Spotlight query to create them. Okay, so you do need to be familiar with Spotlight queries for that. The user group then is the important one here. You do need to add it to a user group. Even if you don't have user groups enabled, you will have to assign it to your default user group. So if you do create a client configuration, do make sure that you actually add it to the actual users that you want to use it. Okay, so we'll leave it there in terms of the run through, and I will take any questions and answers, or any questions, sorry, I'll give the answers for any of the stuff we've run through here today. Okay. Jim, do you have a question? No problem at all, Jim. Thanks for joining. Do we have any other questions for today's webinar? If you don't have a question and you're happy enough with everything that has been shown today in today's webinar, I will thank you for joining us today. We will be doing another webinar in March, and the invitations will go out again about the second week of March, with the aim of running the webinar in the third week of March. Okay, again, thank you for taking your time to join us here today. If you do need to leave, I will be sending out the link to the recording of this session with notes, with my slide deck also, once we have this hosted on our support.mozy.com forum. Okay, no problem at all, Angie. Thank you for joining us. Nick, just got your question there. Nick, no, there's no distinct advantages. So Nick's question was in relation to my comment that you can install the server software on a desktop, but besides being able to back up shared drives, is there any advantage to doing that? So the software is the same for both machines, so there is no difference. The only difference is that if you set yourself up as a server user, you have the ability to add and back up network shares. Okay. There is no distinct advantage to say that, you know, there's extra abilities or anything like that. The only difference is that with a server user, they can back up obviously a server operating system, but they can also back up network shares and network applications. So the only reason I was saying that you would maybe use a server user on your desktop operating system was if there was a situation where your desktop machine was connected to a network share within the office space and you wanted to back it up. So that would be the only advantage. Does that answer your question okay, Nick? No problem at all. Thank you for your question. Do we have any other questions before we finish up today? Okay, so again, thank you for joining, everybody. If there's no more questions, I'll give it another two or 3 minutes there before we wrap up. But again, thank you for joining. Our March webinar will be on Mozy for servers. So as I mentioned a moment ago, we'll be going through the backup sets on servers, VSS backup sets, and network shares. Okay, so we'll be just going over some information on those, when it's beneficial to use VSS backup sets, using backup sets in particular, and also adding and backing up network shares. So that's our March webinar. Okay, so it doesn't look like we have any more questions coming through, so we will finish up today's webinar. Again, thank you for joining. If you do have any questions or any questions pop up in relation to this that you might think of during the day or over the next couple of days, don't hesitate to email me, and I will try and get back to you as quickly as I can with an answer. Okay, thanks very much for joining, everybody, and have a good day.